I'm not sure what happened to the intro.
Hmm.
That was odd, but we are live, guys, so
Yeah.
that's fine. Okay,
Yeah.
so the intro didn't play today, guys, but that is okay.
Mhm.
Nevertheless, hi everyone, welcome. This is Michelle with Infinite Perspectives, and tonight is another amazing show. Welcome, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight. And as we said, this is Infinite Perspectives, where voices become vision and vision becomes legacy. Again, I'm Michelle Diamond, co founder of Infinite Perspectives Brand, and I'm honored to hold this amazing space alongside my co host, co founder, and sister in vision, the infamous Miss Linda Boston.
Bless you, magnificent Michelle. I'm Linda Boston, vocalist, actor, and narrator who uses my voice to tell stories that invite people to see the world and each other a little more deeply. So be the change that you seek.
Absolutely. Ah, I love it. And of course, Infinite Perspectives is proudly brought to you by Peer Incorporated, Next Level Promotion, a division of Infinite Perspectives Brands, Moniker Enterprises, Carlotta Cole the Brand, and Unlimited Networks Property Management. Now, buckle up because tonight's conversation is about youth,
Mhm.
confidence, access, and the power of leaning into your calling without fear.
Mhm.
This is not about polishing children, this is about positioning them.
That's absolutely right. Thank you, Michelle. You know, we're living in a time where young people are overexposed to information, but underexposed to preparation. Now, they're
Yes.
talented, they're intelligent, they are capable, but access is often determined by invisible rules. Tonight,
Mhm.
we're exploring etiquette, not as policing, but as power,
Mm.
not as assimilation, but as agency, you know?
Yes.
Because when confidence meets competence, rooms shift.
Yes, they do. Ooh, that was beautiful, Linda. Thank
Yeah.
you. Now, tonight, guys, we welcome the beautiful and amazing Dr. Courtney Howe, a proud Detroit native, nonprofit leader, founder and CEO of Paramount Professionals Etiquette Academy, serving youth ages 8 to 18 with nearly a decade in fund development,
Mhm.
program design, and operations. Dr. Howe's work sits at the intersection of leadership, education, and community transformation. Her academy delivers etiquette, social
Mhm.
skills, leadership training, arts exposure, cultural competence, life application skills, all rooted in Detroit and built for the future. Dr.
Mhm.
Howe, welcome to Infinite Perspectives.
Thank
Yes.
you both for the invitation. And I'm just, again, in deep gratitude to be here to speak with you all today. So it's a pleasure seeing you both on this Wednesday.
Ah,
Oh, yes,
the
yes.
feeling is mutual and reciprocated.
Yes, absolutely. Well, let's start at the beginning, Courtney.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Let me roll it back. Because, see, I've known you all your life. I remember when you were conceived. I wasn't there, but I know your parents very well.
Yes, you
And
do.
and we have a long history. I clearly remember your mother, Cynthia Howe, teaching us in college the proper way
Mm,
at a dinner table. And we didn't know that. We're 20 years old thinking we know, you know. So I've got to start with the beginning with you and this wonderful venture that you're on. When
Yes.
did shift from idea? When did this shift from an idea to a calling?
Well,
mm,
and again, you've been my Aunt Linda for 30 plus years. So look, Aunt Linda, there's not been a holiday where I haven't been able to set a table to this day. So,
Yeah.
Aw.
those lessons from generational lessons are still very important and embedded in our
Mm,
family. So I'm grateful for that too. But whereas I want to start with talking about purpose within grief. So
Mhm.
this entire vision and this pathway have started in that way. So the past 3 years, and being transparent, I've been grieving a lot of different things, whether it's relationship, job, losing my grandfather, I was very, very close with. And within that, that forced me to rethink what legacy looked like for me.
Mhm.
And, I'm in my 30s, mid 30s, no kids, I'm a single woman, only child. And so, like, this idea of having like a nuclear family, it was shifting, in a very immediate way. And so, it was about a year ago, a little over a year ago, and I was having this grief moment. I was in mid prayer, talking to God about like, okay, where should I go with my life? And
Yes.
very loudly, the words etiquette classes came to me. And
mm,
I've never been that person to experience God talking very loudly and directly, but that happened. And I said, okay, I need to figure out what this means to me and what this means for my purpose. And so, um, although my journey, I guess to family, how people define family may have shifted, I can still nurture youth within my community in a very impactful way. So
Mhm.
that's how Paramount Professional Etiquette Academy started. And I remember those days in high school and middle school where I was exposed to different youth organizations. I was a part of the Del Sprite Club in high school. I was the vice president, so working with Delta Sigma Theta and those youth auxiliary groups there. And that's where I learned not just public speaking skills, event planning skills as a 16-year-old, also etiquette and the importance of um, um, being, front facing with people.
Yeah.
And so that's where it started. And so as I'm also continuing to be in a nonprofit space, but moving into entrepreneurship, I said I need to just learn some resources to make sure I'm prepared to move into that space. So I have taken advantage of a lot of different programs through the city of Detroit and other
Mhm.
nonprofits to really help small businesses and first-time entrepreneurs. So I'm very grateful.
Well, you mentioned faith.
Yes.
So, what did leaning into faith over fear look like to you? Or to would it look like to us?
I for personally, I have always been a very structured and meticulous person. I've always had a plan. I've always had these steps to take to get to how I define success.
Mhm.
And I was leaning into spaces and where the things I was doing was more so a barrier in not pushing me forward. And
Yeah.
so I have to stop and say, okay, God, now listen, my brain, everything that I've done in the past, I've been able to hit these milestones. I've been really operating through life like a strategic plan. My brain is very business. And God is like, I am not a business. I'm your father. So
Ah,
you need to learn how to let go of control.
mhm.
mm.
Yeah. So that meant that you had to overcome resistance.
Yes. Which is still very hard. I'm still working through, but
I feel you.
but
Feel you.
I'm grateful for this space. And the unknown is in that gray. I am not a gray girl, but I'm the opportunities that's coming forth to me now is just been a blessing.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's amazing. I love that. Very well relayed. Thank you for that. Now, we talked about faith over fear. We
Yes.
talked about you overcoming resistance. You conducted a focus group session with
Mhm.
parents, educators, and students. And the reason why I'm leaning into this is because we talked about overcoming the fear and the resistance. And sometimes when we do focus groups, resistance can come about.
Yeah.
So with that being said,
Mm.
what did you learn from each perspective?
Mhm.
Absolutely. So to give some more background within my, new budding business, I wanted to make sure that my visions were meeting the needs of the community, making sure that parents were being served, students were being served, and also educators. So I created these focus group events and invited people to come in to learn about my vision and what the business is. I did some demo presentations, and then I did the focus group. And I have some notes of some different themes that I was able to bring forth. So I asked the adults and the parents in the room, what was the current availability of youth programs that was really focusing on social skills in the Detroit area? And what they said was it was about 60% of them said there were not enough programs targeting specifically soft skills and leadership skills. So yes, we know that there's a lot of academic programs, whether it's around STEM or math and science and reading comprehension, but in order to be highly considered for college applications or internships or transitioning from academic spaces to the workspace, you need those soft skills. And one of my philosophies is when a child is in that junior senior high school year, they should really be focusing on entering one of the 3 E's as they transition. So that's enrollment of an institution of higher learning. That should be gainful employment in some capacity. So again, those internships, those other workforce programs, or also military enlistment. I know that may not be the traditional path, but that structure is so needed for a lot of these students. So how can I provide these resources and tools to make sure that they enter one of these pathways?
Right.
Mhm.
That's great. I like that. And having options always necessary because one person's path may not be the next person, and having options is very necessary for anyone to make a decision that best suits their lives.
Right.
So, with everything that you laid out and what the parents said the needs were, what surprised you most through that experience?
Excellent question. Yeah.
That is a great question. As I kind of laid out some of the different curriculum themes that I'm incorporating into, the business, mental health and emotional stability and
Yes.
regulation was honestly the top theme. So
Yeah.
again, you can teach a child how to write a resume, how to interview, how to do networking. I'll give you our prime example, how we as adults deal with microaggressions in the workplace
Mm.
and how that affects not just our self-esteem, our self-worth. It almost always creates a barrier to promotion or upward mobility. But as adults, we understand one, the historical context of that. Um, but we've also may have been in the workforce for 10 years, 20 years. So we kind of understand who to trust, who not to trust, how to respond to someone or different outlets to, release that. But for 18-year-old who, they don't know how to process that because it's very much a reactive state, and they don't understand the severity of personal brand sometimes, or
Right.
that idea of professionalism. So that mental health component has been the biggest need from
Mm.
not just parents but also educators.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with that. So we talked a lot about how you started and how Paramount came to fruition.
Yes.
What I want to kind of break apart a little bit is, when did you, it was already manifested for sure, but when did you feel that affirmation within and said that, hey, this need for Paramount is absolutely necessary.
Yeah, and needed to be structured the way you did it.
Exactly.
That's a really good question. I've worked in, my original industry was sport management, and I had my academic advising certificate as well. So my pathway originally was to be an athletic director, but also a guidance counselor for student athletes. So focusing on, there was a huge challenge with student athletes as they transition from college to, again, the real world, the workforce. A lot of times they will just come back to campus kind of wandering, like, I have no idea how to function outside of the weight room, outside of college classes. Like, what do I do? And I have personal friends who will just come out, you have graduated, get out of here. And so, that was, I saw that as a need. And I've always said, well, that's just a tough space for any person's life, that 18 to 21 gap. Like, how do I be one self-sustaining? How do I gain respect and how do I define success as a human being? So I've always had that desire to be in that space from when I was a college student to even now. And so now that I have these relationships with the community and just some work experience under my belt, I really want to be able to lean in and do some tangible work with this demographic.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that you leaned in, you honed in, and you're owning it. And we love that. So see, even though they told you get out of here, and in your mind, you're like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? The thing is, when calling becomes clear, nothing can stop that. Fear becomes background noise.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's right.
So we're talking etiquette as power, not policing. So historically, etiquette has been framed as assimilation, but you are reframing it. So tell us, what does it mean to teach etiquette as access, not conformity?
Yeah.
It's funny when I was talking to, some people in the community about etiquette, it just really has initially a negative connotation, especially in the Black community. A lot of us equated to elitism, white adjacency, and also, again, as you all mentioned, assimilation and being conformist. And so with my main demographic is targeting our Black and brown kids in the Metro Detroit area, how do we empower them and teach them that, this program is more for access and upward mobility, and not how to, put your head down and kind of be silenced in different rooms. And so how we define etiquette is for Black and brown youth. It is a way to position themselves for advancement in the workplace, academic arenas, and community work. And we really hone in on those leadership skills, soft skills, confidence building, network tools, art application, and we're talking about some field trips we're doing. So how do we apply what we learn in classes into the real world? And also community service exposure. So also we're looking to partner with these different nonprofits and, teach our kids, this is what service looks like, and this is why it's important.
Ooh, we have several for you. Cannot wait. This amazing collaboration. Okay. Oh, I love it. And listen, you said a mouthful. So building infrastructure, that's what we're doing, right? And you talked about so much why it's necessary. Tell us about how social capital and room reading are often gatekept.
Again, as we're talking about microaggressions, as we're talking about us as Black people, even having invitations into the rooms, into these spaces in the workplaces, there are a lot of systems that are designed to keep us out. And if you will look up any academic research article or just, what we observe on social media right now, Black women specifically are the most educated demographic as a whole, and we are out earning, as women, specifically men, right? And so that comes with a lot of different societal shifts in the workplace, because in the workforce, men, particularly white men, they are dominant in leadership positions. And so while we are positioning ourselves to be in these leadership spaces, a lot of times that promotion is based upon who you know. But when we are not given that access to get to know or get to network or build relationships with, people in particular C-suite arenas, then we won't get that access, right? And so that's a big, big barrier for many. And I will also add that just as a people, even, as a millennial or in the workforce now, there's been a lot of societal conditioning to overperform and even conform to find success.
Mm-hmm.
And, we're taught that from generations and generations, right? And so we as millennials, we've had to be that transformative generations, because, we've done everything that our parents and grandparents have told us: go to school and find a husband, and, to gain sustainability,
Yeah.
and on their definition of success. So when that has pivoted, we've had to redefine what success looks like for us.
Mm-hmm.
And that has, caused some discomfort in some workplace areas.
Mm-hmm.
Very true. So, and I know Linda has a mouthful for you. So,
Yeah,
why
because
do
I'm thinking
you
about a lot of
think
things.
teaching this early a form of equity?
Mm. Are you able to? Oh, I'm sorry. Can you repeat the
Yeah,
question? Or
sure. Why do you believe teaching this early
okay.
form of equity?
Thank you. You were breaking up earlier, but you know, again, with my curriculum, we've tailored it towards the elementary, that 8 through 11-year-olds, then the middle school, that 12 to 14, and then the high school of 15 to 18. And we want to make sure that we're equipping them with these skills that, again, that they can apply. And, as I'll give you an example of one of the curriculum thresholds is modern social skills. So not just public speaking, but social media etiquette and personal branding. So
Mm-hmm.
as we see these kids who may have their cell phone for the first time, and, they have this all access to beauty standards, what is appropriate, what is not appropriate, and
Right.
they're internalizing everything that they just have this new access to. How do we teach them that, who you are is enough?
Uh-huh.
How do you instill self-confidence as a 9-year-old who may be going through hormones and puberty and all of that? And even if, for example, for beauty standards, I've seen in the schools, like 14-year-olds look like fillers, and and these different things to change their aesthetic at 14, and you're not even developed. So how do we instill confidence in these kids at an early age, because they're being exposed to
Mm-hmm.
different things at an early age? And
Yeah, yeah.
so that is something that we need.
That's interesting you say that, because all I can think about is how social media has affected young people, in fact, as young as 4 and 5 years old.
Mm,
And the imitation that happens from what they see, they have a tendency to lose their identity.
yes.
Mhm.
They lose themselves in someone else.
Mm,
And so you compile that with culture
Mhm.
and trying to maintain a cultural foundation, you've lost it all based on the constant saturation of technology.
Yes.
When you wake up and the first thing you do is pick up your phone, means that you've lost who you are. Okay. So let's talk about cultural fluency.
Yes.
How do you scale social navigation skills without erasing identity?
A few answers come to mind.
Mhm.
I'm a history buff, so I am an advocate of understanding, what has happened in our past truly affects us in the present. So really teaching kids, like, why these beauty standards, are a thing. We're talking about hair and not just aesthetic, but why there's federal policies around Black women and our hair. You
Do you hear
know,
what you just said? That
yeah,
crown is having a hard
yes,
time.
yes, yes, yes. And also, as you're entering the workplace as a HR professional, it's
Mhm.
important for them to understand. Um, yes, we want to push professionalism and, I guess, imaging and branding, but also individualism. So if you're in a creative space or you're in a
Yes.
particular industry, that person can be themselves. They will be okay,
Right.
and so also when you're creating different policies for the workforce and you're trying to say, enforce tattoos versus hair color, whatever. And
Mhm.
if that affects one demographic of people over another, then there's a lack of equity there. And so we really have to have those conversations about, what is, I guess, important, or what is, and how do we keep the humanity of our team members and not looking at our employees as just, numbers, but actual humanize the people who are working for us. So that's something, again, you're talking, going back to kids, like children, they've not experienced that. They don't know that. They may have that structure in schools, like some private schools, you have to, have certain haircuts, or, can't
Right.
have natural hair. That was a thing. I went to Catholic school, K through 8, and I remember, a lot of the Black young men, you had that one lock that was, that was in the back coming out, like in
Yeah.
our kitchen, again, verbiage. But, I had a friend who had to shave that or cut that off in like 4th grade, and how that affected his identity and, who he was as a Black boy. And that's learned at a very young age. So we are trying to teach our children, yes, how do we stay kind of relevant, not the best word, but relevant in the workplace, but also how do we make sure that we don't lose who we are in that transition.
Right.
Absolutely. So the
Mhm.
message you're talking about, it does not, because what you have is a program
Mhm.
that isn't about shrinking youth
No,
to
no.
fit the room. It's about expanding their authority within them.
Correct. And again, as we think about the definition of etiquette, people think that's the complete opposite. People assume that etiquette means that I am not worthy of being in this space if I've not perfected how to cut a steak, and
Mhm.
and I want to be very clear, as a recovering perfectionist myself, but none of this is about perfection. It's not about, you have to earn your place in anywhere that you go. It is, how do you elevate who you already are, and to
Yeah.
make sure people do not overlook you.
Yes, and embrace your individuality.
That's right.
If they
That's right.
can't, if they can't, if I wrote a song called "Know Thyself." If you don't know who you are,
Mm-hmm.
you can't possibly collaborate with another human being because you don't know where you fit and how you fit. So now let's talk about something else that's powerful. Confidence is often the differentiator, not competence, especially
Mhm.
for Black youth. So What is the confidence gap? What is that?
Good question.
I want to read some data points that I pulled for this. And
Please.
I want
Yes.
to go back to I'll start with microaggressions again. I really want to touch on that. Looking at data, students in suburban schools and districts with non-Black or Hispanic educators are experiencing racial microaggressions, which are affecting their mental health,
Mm-hmm.
sense of belonging, academic engagement, and willingness to persist. And specifically, our Black students are disproportionately suspended for minor infractions, not because of worse behavior, but interpreted behavior. And so, again, how do youth deal with this in the workplace as an adult? How do they understand what these microaggressions are? How do they practice self-regulation when they are experiencing this? But I really want to talk about interpreted behavior versus actual. So
Please.
again, when we talk about biases, we talk about prejudice, when, and it's very unfortunate, but when if a group of Black kids were just walking to a store, and again, how people are dressed, and or how they wear their hair, the natural hair is really a thing, so wearing locks or whatever that may be, or larger fros, baggier clothing. And this has been generational, because my generation wear baggy clothing too. But there is an assumption that they are less than, they are incompetent, they lack education, they lack couth and decorum. And that is a perception that we can identify for generations, since before enslavement actually too.
Mhm.
And
Exactly.
so again, there's this premise that to be clean, dapper, to be pristine is to be closer to whiteness, right? And the closer we get to there, whether that's how they dress or there are different practices, that is what is correct. And that is how etiquette has been branded, specifically within the US. And I will also say in European standards too. And so how do we shift that to say, hey, who you are is worthy, but also if there's a demand that we need to show up in a specific way, let's do that, but also showcase what else do we have to offer, whether it's our skill sets, whether it's our innovativeness, all of that. So how do we have our kids present their whole selves into these rooms so they can not just get there but stay there?
Yeah, now that's interesting you said that, because I'm curious to know, without divulging any confidentialities, what are you seeing in students before and after programming?
And before she answers that, may I interject? We did have a comment
Oh
that
yeah.
came in from the wonderful Mrs. Felicia Simone that we were speaking about earlier, from the Simone Family Foundation. Amazing person, like mine. And I can't wait for you guys to speak. I'm speaking it into fruition. She said, I love that, expanding your authority. Etiquette is so much more of that. You should coin that.
Noted. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
and I do apologize, but we just wanted
That's
to.
okay. That's all right.
read the
That's
comment.
important to know. As you move through your journey, you're going to have, you're going to, when you're operating in your purpose, blessings open tremendously to you.
Yes. Yes.
That's just how energy works. I follow metaphysics. I follow energy, sacred geometry. That's just how it works. And and like-minded people connect, and people on the same energy flow create a bigger flow of the same energy, and
Absolutely.
all of that. And I see these students making a difference in the generations to come. That's why I was asking, what are you seeing in students before and after programming? How are you seeing what you're seeing? You know what I'm saying?
Yes, yes. And so with our curriculum, because we are new, we've not been able to gather that data, but I have worked with other youth organizations, particularly workforce development, and just the simple teachings of what payroll is, or how to, what those economic things, taxes,
Yeah.
or how to open a bank account, what those economic gaps have been for them, and even parents, and so being 16 and requiring a bank account to get their money from their job, and parents don't have bank accounts. So not only do we have to educate and provide resources for our youth, but we also have to do the same things for our parents. And going back to some of the information that I got from our focus group session, one of the largest points was buy-in from parents in the household. So, for example, when there may be a family of four, traditional family of four, and you have the young man, and this is also a co-ed program, it's not just tailored to young women, which is very important. But
Yes.
when we're, a young man comes through our program and is learning dining etiquette and table manners, and you go home and you may be bullied in the home, because who do you think you are? You think you're better than me? We don't need this. And that not just come from sibling, but that may also come from the parent. And so they don't see value in what etiquette and table manners is. And so how do we get that buy-in from the parents, but also how do we make sure what they're learning is applied when they go back home? So that application portion is very, very important. And so you're not just providing resources to that one child, but to the entire household. And so people have been asking me, well, we need to provide some coursework and resources for the whole parent, kind of like a wraparound service, for the entire household. So that's something that I'm trying to process and navigate, but that has been a huge ask from the community as well.
I'm looking forward to seeing that, how that turns out on your first graduates, so to speak.
Yes.
Yeah.
Love it.
And it's also interesting, you're talking about a bank account. There's an enormous amount of scamming going on.
Yes.
There are creative banks that are being created and offered to you via your phone. And you have to teach them not to trust each and everything that they see coming through that phone. Just like necessarily believe the picture in the movie you are watching is not AI. All those offers are not real offers. I'll send you a link to a thing called pig butchering scams, because a lot of young people want to get rich quick. They want it all yesterday. We have to calm them down and tell them to slow your roll and operate in time, not out of time.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah.
Could you read Felicia's question, Linda?
Yes, I can.
Well, not question. She had a comment.
I'm gonna put on my eyeballs. I agree that those etiquettes are principles rooted in our culture. Code switching, my daughter talks about it all the time. Code switching teaches you how to navigate different social environments without rejecting your cultural identity. So code switching has its purpose. Yeah.
It's unfortunate that you have to do that, but if you have to play the game to win, then you just have to learn how the game is played, because there's rules and instructions in every game that we play, whether it's a Monopoly or the game of life, and we just have to learn how to adjust and play it.
Is there a specific thing that is done to build embodied presence and not just presentation skills?
As I'm creating the curriculum, and just being able to talk to the community and get other perspectives, because as we're creating not just businesses, but academic programs, even we may have different credentials, but we're not the, we're not the, we don't have all the answers, right? And so how do we embrace partnerships with different organizations, and just not just to incorporate different skill sets or ideals like you're talking about, but how to make sure that they are data backed, and also aligns. I'm going to talk about funding too, and I'm going to kind of shift this to talk about DEI work, and again, teaching students why history is so important, as we're talking about why affirmative action was even created, and why it was dismantled, and why it was dismantled in this particular time period. Um, our high school students are entering, I would go say college. Our college students are entering a workforce that is deliberately creating systems to pigeonhole, right?
Yes.
Deliberately, and it's very apparent, not just with the federal level, but even state and local. And so, how do we navigate that, but also how do they not internalize what all of that means? Just some background: when I did my doctoral studies through 2020 to 2023, and I have my EDD in organizational leadership. And so my entire research was diversity, equity, inclusion in the workplace, and nonprofits specifically, and how to incorporate those different policies and workplaces to make sure equity is there, which will benefit, from a financial funding level, but also employee morale. And now DEI, you can't even put the word Black in anything. You can't put diverse, you can't put equity. Even just certain verbiage you cannot put on a website, you cannot put in your policies, or you will not receive funding. And so when we have a nonprofit founder who has created a nonprofit to specifically help Arabic kids in a particular neighborhood, but they can't say that outwardly.
Yeah.
As a leader, how does that affect your identity, not just as an organization, but as a leader? So all of these things have created shifts, but youth have to understand why we are where we are, and why it's important for them to be educated as as they are navigating these spaces, so they can feel empowered to do some community work and advocacy.
When you talk about programs that have been shut down because of where we are today, makes me think, looking at what you're doing today, that those shutdowns are an effort to sabotage one's purpose. And that's heartbreaking. So now what you're doing is you're shifting things for a young person so that when they walk into the room, they know, I belong here. I have every right to be here.
Absolutely.
I'm qualified to be here. I've prepared to be here.
Yes.
That's powerful. That's powerful.
Yes.
Well, employers are begging for communication, emotional intelligence, professionalism, adaptability.
Yes.
Why are these now foundational?
There was another article from Deloitte, research from Deloitte. In 2024, there was a survey of different managers and different executives, and 56% of these leaders identified that weak soft skills as the primary reason why these entry-level candidates are not ready for the workforce, and why they are not being hired. And so some of the examples that were identified in the article that I have seen in that hiring space: struggle with eye contact and basic communication skills, dressing inappropriately for interviews. I've even have seen college students bring their parents to actual interviews and answering questions on behalf and asking, so when is my child going to be hired? It is just, and I've never seen that, and that is something that my parents wouldn't even like. What do you mean? They may not even know I interviewed. You know, that's just how disconnected. It's just a very different time.
Yes.
And also understanding workplace norms as well. So yes, that not just how people speak to one another, but I'll give an example. Thinking about tobacco use from like the 80s and 90s. When you have a break, you may go outside and do what you do and come back inside. But now that vaping is very popular, people are like, on phone calls, vaping, or in meetings. And that is just a very different workplace norm. And so, as a generation, that is what's common to them, within their social settings. So it's an assumption that you can bring what you do with your friends to the workplace. And employees are seeing that, and they're like, you may have all the educational backing, you do know all the technology skills more than anybody, but again, those soft skills, they're not there. So who is teaching them these things?
Wow, that was a mouthful. We had some comments. Chanel Oham, I don't want to butcher your name, said, wow, when you talked about the parents coming to the interview. Before that, when we were speaking about, code switching, Felicia said, listen, she said, girl, I am the best at it, and taught my daughter and students. And then when you went into talking about the funding and breaking it down, what's not allowed on the application, she says absolutely none of it. Yep. Because she does funding as well. So this is amazing. And then we have another comment that just came in. I just wanted to make sure we get them on here. And this is from Britters Marie. She said, I love this. You all spoke earlier about the difference between confidence versus competence, and it comes down to exposure.
Yes.
That's why programming like this is so important. Absolutely. Lisa jumped in and said, Lisa Boston Bats. Hello, Lisa. Wow, that was a mouthful. You took it out of my mouth. We have some adults that need to go through etiquette. Absolutely. Absolutely. I cannot agree more. I mean, it's crazy. And this is why I believe the next question is so in tune with everything that we just discussed. So, how do you believe Paramount building a youth service pipeline? Or let me rephrase that. How is Paramount building a youth service pipeline by partnering with other programs?
Wonderful.
Yeah, so one of the main goals and part of our vision is to create a youth services pipeline of, there's so many different, youth programs, whether it's through school systems or other nonprofits. And what a challenge has been is kids are not knowing, or parents not knowing, that things exist until their senior year of high school, or them not having the access to be a part of these programs, whether because of the cost or the distance or location of these programs. So for me and my business model, I don't see other youth programs as competitors. I see us as partners. So yes, there are going to be other businesses that provide etiquette classes, or that do other soft skills training. But how do we partner to maybe work together? Or when a child matriculates through my program, how can I have a direct referral service for them to say, hey, I know that your skill set is in drones, or, you really want to get into the arts and performing. These are some programs that I have personal relationships with that I'm going to refer you to. And, that's the big idea and thought. and then to have a huge youth summit. So where all of these organizations are in the same space, so our parents can be a one-stop shop and say, hey, here are 50 youth programs that I can choose from for the summer or
Yeah.
for fall after school. So they don't have
Awesome.
to scatter and rely on a
Mhm.
counselor at a school to provide them a list. There's
Mhm.
like one pathway to that.
Mhm.
Beautiful. I love it. And Linda Mulling, no, Mulligato.
Mulagata, Mulagata.
Mulligato, Mulligato. Okay, I'm sorry. Don't get me tonight, you guys. I apologize. She said, Courtney, you're doing so much. And then she says, Courtney, what you're bringing to young people is truly needed and necessary. I believe that's what she meant by that.
Thank you. That's my
Most
family. A lot of my friends, our family are on again. I
Oh,
appreciate the
I
support. Thank
know.
you all.
Thank you for
Uh-huh.
supporting. We love it.
Yes.
So, I love that you talked about, partnering with other programs and the necessity of it. Why do you believe collaboration over competition?
That we, as a community, that's what community is.
Mhm.
Community is the reliance of the ecosystems of people and humans to just not just excel, but exist. We
Mhm.
can't, and again, as people's definition of success is changing and transforming, like we have to be able to present these resources to our community to make sure that we as a people are sustained and sustainable. And so, there's so much competition back and forth, or again, barriers against us anyway. Just as a society, what's needed is collaboration and really figuring
Yes.
out a way for all of us, whether it's nonprofit goal sets or business goals, to not just earn money, but also earn impact. It's our responsibility to find a way to accomplish both.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I love that. And when you spoke about collaboration, Felicia jumped in and said, would love to connect on some possible grant
Yeah.
partnerships.
Oh,
Yeah.
wonderful.
And
That'd be great.
And of course, Linda came back and said, Courtney, you are bringing something that is truly needed in these times. Your Aunt Linda had a charm school in the 60s.
Mhm.
Absolutely. You know what? And again, I am really into genealogy and ancestry, and I just wanted to address too the importance of understanding your histories, particularly Black women and our pathway to where we are now. I want to acknowledge, my great aunt Linda and other women that came before me. As we're in International Women's Month, I honor both of my grandmothers because they both
Yeah.
were from Deep South Arkansas and
Yes, they were.
Alabama,
Mhm.
and were college educated. And they came up to
Mhm.
Detroit with their, husbands and families to create a new life. And then when we think about women, who were married and, their women's place and,
Yeah.
transitioning from, being a housewife or being a domestic into even just having the choice or decision to be educated and create a new path of upward mobility, all of that translates from generations. And
Correct.
so, what I would love to empower young people to think about is every decision that you're making today, it is absolutely impactful 50 years from now, whether you understand that or not. And
Mhm.
so, even if you have the courage or take the leap of faith to start, a HVAC program or CTC programming or, whatever you want to do or create a new business, all of that is affecting your legacy. You're creating a legacy. And so, with all the women before me who have taught me these skill sets, who have
Beautiful.
advocated for education and its importance, we're here for a reason.
Mhm.
Yes,
Mhm.
truly indeed. So we see that in this circumstance or situation, that Detroit is not the exception. It
Yeah.
is the blueprint. And from legacy that came years before that, that lineage is still sitting strong, and I love it.
Mhm.
Um, we're talking about lineage and what we got from just adapting and being sponges, really, from our environments, right? And we see what purpose is, and we see it in our elders. And now that we're applying those same skills and understanding what is necessary for our youth, it leads us into scaling with integrity, right? So
Yeah.
as you're expanding,
Yeah.
what do you believe should or must remain sacred?
Mhm.
Understanding the value of confidence, leadership skills, etiquette as a whole, because there has to be buy-in, not just with the student,
Mm,
with the parent, the household, but also in these school systems. And so, as you mentioned, scaling, I am looking to present these workshops to different schools and school districts and say, hey, this is not just a program for those who may have means or who may come from a particular background, because I even had feedback or those are just for the Jack and Jill kids. No, this is for everybody. And so how do I create these partnerships and pathways so every student can have access to these skill sets? And then also, how do we tap into the different school districts to help with grant funding or funding periods so we can have access, that create that access gap. And the
Mhm.
last thing I really want to talk about is the importance of exposure throughout this program, because in the 8-week cohort that I'm looking to launch this year, I am implementing and field trip, like arts exposure field trip. So that may be a field trip to the theater or a concert or a play or just something of the arts. So again, where they can apply these skills into the real world. And so as we all know, like the arts in different school districts are on the verge of decline in particular states
mhm.
with funding as well. So how do we make sure that they understand the importance of the arts, but also enjoying being in those spaces? If Alan Ailey is in town or the Lion King or the Wiz, how do we make sure that those kids are going to these spaces and really enjoying that? And again, just having them be exposed to
Yes,
different ways of life, different careers as well.
Mhm.
correct. It's so funny that you said that. Several schools are actually being shut down here in Georgia,
Mm.
and it's sad. I believe they said it was, I think, over 100. But anyhow, it's a little sad. But in this scenario, what do you believe can be replicated?
Yeah.
What can be replicated? Can you
Yes.
elaborate for that?
Well, in regards to Paramount, what can be replicated with the students, with the work that you're putting in? What do you believe can be done? And I believe you answered it when you talked about collaboration
Mhm.
and even the online version. So just wanted to, give those that joined a little bit later
Mhm.
a little bit more access into what we discussed earlier. So, because we talked about expanding, and with that, what do you believe can be replicated through the expansion?
Absolutely. So, how the program is currently structured, having these singular workshops, so going into different schools, going into different churches, other youth community organizations, do have a different list of different course topics, but how do we go and do some one-on-ones with groups, but also having an 8-week cohort in which every week there's like a program based cohort. And then we're also at the end, we're doing an end of year high tea graduation ceremony. So again, how are we
Mm.
applying what we're learning? So partnering with
Beautiful.
different Black owned businesses or minority-owned businesses to actually have the high tea and showcase what they've learned with their families and maybe incorporate headshots again, just understanding that professional trajectory. And lastly, I'm looking to introduce some virtual memberships, so subscriptions. So every week there'll be opportunities for adults and youth to come on for like a 40 minutes. So if there is a banker or someone from a particular banking institution that's going to teach them how to open a bank account, or teach parents the same, home ownership, having a realtor come in or someone from home lending company to come in and talk about these skills. And so how do we tap into different industries and have guest speakers, facilitators
Yes.
come in to really be that wraparound resources that is needed in the community.
Well,
I love that.
Zoom is not the only one. StreamYard does that. You see that, right?
I see. Yes. So
Yes.
listen, we do all virtual opportunities. Again, that's how we expand. That's how we expand that access to whomever needs these services.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
And I'm glad you delved into the community specific portion of it. Thank you for that. So, how do you scale values first instead of volume?
I love you asked some lovely questions. Values first instead of volume. And again, values first. Again, a lot of talking to parents, they really want to know, how is this program a need and not a want? And so as parents are positioning their children for college or post-secondary life, how can this maybe investment or enrollment in this program, how can this opportunity excel them into the next step? So whether this is an opportunity for a scholarship, based upon a partnership that I've created, or an internship opportunity, again, understanding like that 3E exposure. So enrollment and a means of higher education, enlistment in the military, or gainful employment. I am looking to get partnerships in all three of these facets. So when these kids graduate, they will have something for them to take with them for that next step that will help propel them. And so that's the value in itself.
Well, now that makes me ask you, what are your non-negotiables as you grow?
My non-negotiables, I I I don't believe in exploitation. There's a lot of people who want to partner with different youth services that have, other agendas. My thing is, I want to see our shift in our youth community here. I want people to understand that there's access and have them learn that, hey, if there's food insecurity, I understand what that means, and here's urban garden organizations, and just have them understand like what the need is and how to get there. But I don't want to exploit these kids, because they're learning and they're vulnerable, and they're children too. And so how do we make sure that that is not happening? So there may be I know there are people who may say, hey, I provide scholarships, but you got to pay me $1,000 for you to get access to this.
I know. Yeah.
That is a thing. So
I
how
know.
do we make sure that does not happen for our kids?
Right. I love that. So beautiful. I love this entire segment. It's so needed. So when a Paramount student of yours walks into a room 10 years from now, what do you hope they carry?
Oh, good question.
I want to make sure that they are positioning themselves, for they are prioritizing themselves, that they have already established or defined who they are as a human being and what their identity is, because that is something that I would admit that myself, it's taken me a long time to figure out who I am, and to also self-advocate, utilize your voice. A lot of times, especially as Black people in the workplace, there's some you're sometimes reprimanded when you do speak up for the good. Right. And so when you're on the good side of society or policy, I want to make sure that they are empowered and to be in those spaces and not be afraid to what may happen, after that. I want them to understand the value of giving back to the community. Within this program, I want to create an alumni teach back opportunity. So, once they graduate and maybe they're in late college or they're 25 and say, you know what, I have had some lived experience and I want to come back and I want to be a facilitator, because also, when kids will think you're old at 30 these days. So now how do you relate to a 12-year-old, because when you're maybe 60 and you've had a business, you're just retiring, you want to go back in the community, you may not be able to relate to that 12-year-old because who are you? They don't understand why that's important that you're there.
Right.
But when you're 25 and you're still cool, or you just have some relatability, that speaks a lot of volumes. They really can see who they can be, in the very near future. So I really want them to be exposed to a vision that they can really see and be.
I love that. So absolutely. And to reiterate your words, not just skill, but identity.
Yes.
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 What's interesting is that I'm 150 years old. and I am just now becoming very satisfied with who I am. In the last 5, maybe 10 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And in the last year, there has been a catapult in where I'm going. We never stop growing. Yeah. I have been an actress for a long time. And recently, in the last year or two, did something that I should not have done in there. I had to think twice about it. I would love to talk to your students about not selling your soul for your gift.
Ooh.
You don't have to sell your soul it's your gift. You don't have to sell it on, But etiquette is not about perfection. It's about preparation. It's about breathing.
Yes.
Breathing. Stop and breathe.
Absolutely. And we also have to remember that confidence is not arrogance. It is alignment. And Felicia said, mic drop.
Yeah.
So before we close, Dr. Hough, you said Courtney, but Dr. Hough, we're letting the world know Dr. Hough, okay, is in the building.
Yes.
Let's tap in. Let's collaborate. Let's grow together. Let's uplift these kids and their families that may all need this etiquette training so that they can step into a room knowing that they own it. Because guess what? They just had to remember who they were. They were never lost. They were always there. They just have to go back in, tap in, and remember.
Yes.
So, Dr. Hough, one of our favorite questions we like to ask. Now that you see the need to help others remember who they were and who they are and stand in it so eloquently, what would you say to your younger self?
Oh, Lord. We in here. Okay.
Yes.
What's the question?
And listen, what would you say to your younger self if you had the opportunity? And what does that conversation look like?
Wow. I may have a glass of wine after this. but I have been in transition with quite a few things, and especially during this grief journey, and really trying to reestablish my self-worth as I'm, just navigating through, different workspaces or social spaces. But I have been tending to my younger self. And so that it has been I talk to her all the time. And I think the biggest, and this is very recently too, but the biggest lesson is, the people who may doubt you or the people who, you know, may have this perceived notion about you, they are humans just like you. They make mistakes just like you. There is no such thing as perfection. There is not a definite destination for your journey of growth. Because that's another thing that we learn too, is, you know, when you are successful, it is defined by this. And when you get there, that's it. Or when you grow, this is the specific stop that you need to get to. And Aunt Linda, like you said, you know, people are learning and growing in every age that they're at. And my younger self did not know that. And so also, girls, stop looking at other people for validation. But that is, you know, we
look, I had to do the two steps this time. I had to do the two steps this time.
Yeah. Normal people, they are, girl, get out of here. So that's I have a mirror conversation with her all the time. But, you know, I encourage all youth, no matter where you're from, is to understand that your journey is your journey. And if you mess up, if you make a step, if there's a roadblock, that's okay. You can shift. And I always, the last thing I want to close, you had the analogy about GPS systems. When you make a wrong turn, they don't say you failed, you're wrong, you did this. They just redirecting. And so we have to redirect a little bit.
Ourselves.
And that is life.
I like that. I'm not saying
I love that. Oh, so beautiful. Thank you. So Lisa Boston Vat said, I am so honored to have heard from you tonight, Dr. Hough. Thank you for sharing. This was amazing. And she said, this was wonderful.
Oh, thank you all. Thank you all.
With that being said, thank you to our viewers, our supporters for tuning in, being so uplifting, encouraging, and sharing your comments here with us. She said, redirect. I love that. Yes, redirect. That's right. We're going to use that. Listen, our internal GPS says, we didn't do anything wrong. We're just going to take another U-turn.
That's right. That's right.
Next exit. But thank you so much, Dr. Hough, for building infrastructure for youth leadership rooted in Detroit and expanding outward with integrity. And I am Michelle Diamond.
And I am Linda Boston.
Inviting you to continue expanding your infinite perspectives.
Not by shrinking to fit rooms,
but by entering them prepared.
This is Infinite Perspectives,
where voices become vision.
Good night.
Take this conversation with you into how you live and continue building infinite infrastructures.
Yes.
Yes. And please follow me on Instagram and Facebook to connect. And website
link
is
below.
forthcoming. But yes, thank you all so much for the invitation. I look forward to continuing to serve.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And we did scroll across the bottom her Instagram, Facebook, and her email. So if you rewatch, you have it there as well. And if you forgot and you don't know where to find it, you could go on Linda Boston's YouTube and you will see the replays there. Or you could just tap in also at infiniteperspectivesbrand.com and click on the actual shows, and it's all there for you to catch up, watch, like, comment, share. And if you have any questions, just feel free to reach out to Linda or myself. And Maria Baker says, thank you from a retired educator that still works with teenagers, Marie Baker. Gratitude, Marie. Thank you for joining us, and much love to you. You're never truly retired, because once an educator, always an educator. Love you all. Have a wonderful night. Until next time.
All right.
How you gonna change the things around you? Oh, what you gonna love inside of you. Oh, mhm. When you gonna hear his revelation.